All right, we're looking at a little Springfield Armory Garrison today. This one, I want to put a threaded barrel in it, and we picked up a Nighthawk Custom quote unquote drop-in barrel, and we're gonna see how that goes. I've already done a little test fitting, and it doesn't look like it's gonna drop in. So we're gonna see if we can figure out what the issues are and kind of work through the process. So the first thing that I always like to do is I went ahead and I pulled the extractor out. I pulled the recoil spring out and put those aside. We're not going to need those at the moment. I don't want those influencing any of the tolerances or any of the fitments. So first off, go ahead and take a gunsmith brush and clean the inside of the slide. We want to get any of the buildup that might be in those lugs out. Okay, one of the things we need to do first is we're going to go in here and clean up any of the carbon buildup or any of the gunk that's in these pockets, in these lug pockets here. So we're going to take our little gunsmith toothbrush and clean that out real good. I'm also going to do the same thing with the breech face here. As I said, I've already removed the extractor. Got that out of the way. Once I get that brushed out, I like to use a little canned air and just clean those out good. The barrels are good and clean, so I'm not too worried about them. All right. So the first thing I want to do is just a trial fit. We're gonna drop this Nighthawk Custom in and just see if it fits. All right, it does drop down. So the length of the hood is not an issue. The bushing seems to fit okay. Okay. All right, that slides in good. Drops down. Let's drop it in the frame and see what we're looking at here. And that's a no-go. You can see we're not going fully into battery. Not going to go. All right, so that's all I need to know. That tells us that we've got some clearance issues. We'll go ahead and drop the original barrel in just to kind of illustrate the point here. That's what we're looking for. Now, stock, it's not a super tight fit. You know, they build these things where you can put them together in mass production and not have any fitment issues. If they had to fit each one of these individually and spend a bunch of time with it, they wouldn't make money. That's why we have custom guns. So I can actually feel a little bit of play there, and it's smooth as silk dropping in. That's good. Okay. All right, Alright, we're just going to take a few measurements just to compare. Call that 361. 361. 694. 693 and a half. See how much extra they gave us for the hood fit. All right, we're at about 1 5/16 on the dot. Got a little bit more on the Nighthawk Custom. I like it. So we've got plenty to work with. Shouldn't be a problem there. I'm just going to check this OD of the barrel just for curiosity's sake. 580 thousandths. Basically 580 thousandths. You can't beat the tolerances on the Nighthawk Custom. They're spot on with the original. Okay, so let's check the width of the hood real quick and just make sure we have plenty of material there. Call that 370. $365. So again, the Nighthawk Custom has a little extra material there on the hood. I don't think that's enough to be causing the issue, because I checked the original and it had quite a bit of clearance on the sides of the hood. But we will be checking that to make sure that that's not where the bind is. I do want to check the height. See if I can point to this. So I want to check the height from the top of the lug to the bottom of the barrel, just as a reference. The top of this to the bottom of the barrel, and then we're going to check the depth of the lugs from the top of the barrel to the depth of this lug here. I'm probably not worried about this second lug here. I'm mainly worried about this first one. All right, 653. 637. All right, so let's do that again. $654. And 630. Let's just call it 635. We're not worried about the precision of the measurements right now. We're just mapping things out, trying to find any big differences. That's roughly 20 thousandths different between this surface and the top of the lug. Now, inside the frame, we like for this surface here to be rubbing and seating onto the frame when it's out of battery. When it's in battery, it's not the case, but it is kind of interesting to see almost 20 thousandths of space there. So we're gonna look into that. We're gonna focus on these lugs to see if that might be where our bind up is. Now, this is going to be a little bit tricky to show, but I'm very impressed with the wear pattern that I see on this little Garrison. I don't know if that's going to show up, but you can see where the barrel lug is rubbing nicely on the slide lug. And if you look at this barrel lug, you can see that contact area. And what I like about this is that it's pretty consistent around this radius. A lot of gun manufacturers don't even strive to have this full contact. They'll end up just touching, maybe on one side, or ideally, especially old school gunsmiths will set up a gun, especially a bullseye, to where it contacts here and here, and it precisely sets that barrel back in the same spot every time. Some of our famous bullseye smiths, like Jerry Kiefer, that used to build some of the best guns around, he used to strive for having the full radial contact, and he would precisely go in and machine these surfaces as well as lap the slides to obtain that. And it's quite a bit of work to get that to line up. But interestingly enough, this being an off-the-shelf, relatively reasonably priced gun is making that contact all the way around. And what I found interesting, because that surprised me when I saw that, excuse me, what I found interesting is they're not cutting this with a straight lug cutter. They actually have a profiled lug cutter. And you can see that here as it comes off of the surface. And put something down here so maybe I can show this. You can see that it creates this bell mouth, which will allow that surface right in the middle to essentially find its location on the slide. I am very impressed with that. That's I haven't seen that before, but I think there's something to this. Pretty cool. All right, we're going to jump in this and see if we can figure out if it's the hood that's rubbing or if it's these lugs, which I'm already leaning towards it being these lugs, even though these on the Nighthawk Custom were 20 thousandths deeper. I'm still not so sure that the sides aren't what's rubbing, and we're going to take a look at that. So I've got a plumber's candle, and I'm just going to run this back and forth. It's hard doing this looking through the camera, but I'm just going to run this back and forth and get this sooted up a little bit. And we're going to look for some clearance issues. Now when you do this, make sure that you put the bushing in. And what I actually want to do is I want to keep this barrel centered when it drops down into battery. And to do that, I have a little tool that I made, and I just machine this with a center pocket, and that center pocket is the width of a barrel. And then these outer grooves, or these rails, line up with the slide. Now this garrison is pretty tight with my tools, so my tool is extremely hard to fit in there, but essentially I want something like that. And then when that barrel goes in, I want to keep that centered, and of course it won't go down. Okay, so that tells us that there's a problem when it starts to drop down into battery there, that the barrel's wanting to kick to one side, because it won't go any further than, it's just barely dropping down right there. So if I move this and try that, it drops down. Now I actually saw what our problem is. Let's see if we can do that again. All right, barrel's centered, and I'm going to try to push this straight. See if I can do this. Now watch the barrel kick to one side. There you go. Let's do that one more time. All right, it kicked that way. That's the problem. And I can move it a little bit, but it's pretty tight, and it's bound up, and it's pointing that way. So what's happening is either the hood width or the lugs are pushing us to one side whenever it drops into battery. So I'm just going to push very firm and kind of move that back and forth and see if I can get any kind of wear patterns. Okay. Oh, I already see it. Right there. Not too worried about that line going across there. I see a little bit right there. I see some here. So surprisingly, it's on this back lug. I thought it would be on this front one. I maybe see a little bit on the front. I think we've got it in both spots actually. And then the hood is just barely contacting there. That's good. I'm not worried about that at all. I don't really see anything on the sides. So I think our issue is on these ends of these lugs. Now a lot of gunsmith barrels will actually leave this area a little bit proud here and here on both sides so that you can work these in with a file and allow this barrel to drop right in. So even though this was considered a drop-in barrel, I'm going to go ahead and work this just like a gunsmith fit barrel. We're going to work these back and forth and allow it to drop down into the slide. Now I am going to double check to make sure I have no issues with the width of this hood, because I certainly don't want this to be influencing what I'm reading out here. A lot of the gunsmiths that are fitting barrels are starting to just relieve this completely so that it doesn't influence in either way. If you are building a bullseye, you may strive for trying to lock this up precisely with your barrel drop in with your lugs, but that's a lot of tolerances to hit. And with today's manufacturing, you know, the numbers are all over the place, so it's a little bit difficult. Okay. Okay, we're just trying this again. We're trying to see if we have any rubbing on the side of the hood. Okay, I got nothing. And I got nothing. So I am not worried one bit about the side of the hood just yet. This wear pattern that we see on the breech, or on the end of the hood that contacts the breech, that's perfectly fine. In fact, I like that I see contact all the way across, starting to rub off there. Perfect. And then again, I went ahead and touched up these edges, which of course I just touched it with my finger and missed that side, but I definitely have some contact issues here and on this side. We'll do that one more time. All right. We're marking this up one more time, because this time we're going to actually remove some material from the spots that we see a little bit of rubbing. Okay, perfect. That shows where we're getting that contact right there. And then it looks like right there. So we're going to touch those two areas with a file, and I'll try to show that, and then we'll do another test fit. I forgot to mention one thing, and if you look at this side, you can see that it has a lot more of a mark than over here on this side. And if we look at the bottom of our slide, when it was going down, it was kicking to this side, which is the side that has more of a rub mark. So we're going to work on this side first. This would be our ejection side. Got a little D there just to help remember, but we're going to work on this side a little bit more first. And what we want is when this drops down, we want these feet to stay centered in the slide. And right now they're kicking to the side like that. All right, I'm using my number 2 Swiss safe edge, what I call lug file. It's not, it wasn't purchased as a lug file, but this particular size is a good size for working on lugs like this. So if we measure that, it's about 150 thousandths wide. And like I said, it's a number 2 Swiss safe edge file. All right, now this is going to be a little tricky. I'm going to be looking through the camera, but I'm going to work that area right there. I'm going to register my file on that edge, and then ensure that I'm flat. And we're just going to take the edge off of that corner. And I'm also kind of pivoting as I file, trying to maintain that radius. The goal here is just to remove just a slight bit of material at a time. And then we're going to check it again. Okay. Now, just as a quick check, we're just going to pop it in and see if we're dropping down any better. Put your bushing in every time. Tightened it up, and it dropped down a little bit further, I believe. Made a huge difference. Now, just for curiosity, I don't think that this is going to go together, but just for curiosity, I want to see. Locked up. Pretty interesting. Now it's too tight, obviously. I don't know if you could hear that when it locked up, but that barrel is locked. So pretty amazing how just a couple of swipes with the file made the difference. And she's locking up now. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to repeat the process. We're going to take a little bit more, and this time when we smoke it up, we're going to actually look at, you know, where exactly it's rubbing, and if there's a high spot, you know, we'll be working on this side. But if there's a high spot on one side or the other, we'll work that edge, because the goal is even contact across the entire length of this lug, and even contact across this lug. And we have to pay attention over here on both lugs to see if, you know, it may jump over and we may be rubbing here instead of here. So we'll work both of those as needed. All right, I've got this smoked up again. It is trying to drop in with our little tool, but it's still not going all the way. Sounds better, so we know we're going in the right direction. Oh yeah. Okay, so kind of interesting. On the non-ejection side, we actually have jumped from back here to the front lug. And we're getting some really good contact here. So I'm still going to work this area right here, and I might touch that front lug just a bit. But I'm definitely getting quite a bit of contact here, and I do like that it's even across there. So I'm getting a nice contact patch. And I'm just going to touch this one. Yeah, it looked like I was taking a lot there, but really I was just finding the alignment of my file. I was making sure it was flat, and I wasn't pressing that hard, and I just barely removed some material. Okay, we're going to do a quick check just to see how it looks, and then we'll smoke it up and check on the pattern again here in just a second. All right, we're getting better. So when that drops in, it's kind of hard to tell probably on film, but it's not jumping to the side near as bad. Maybe just slightly. So let's see how it does with the frame. I would say it's about 50% better every time we touch it. We're getting a good contact patch across both of these surfaces on the ejection side, marked with that D there. So big time contact patch across there. So we're going to work both those areas. I'm not really seeing anything hardcore on this other side. I actually want to check the hood now. I'm liking what I'm feeling, but I want to make sure that now that we're seating further that we haven't transferred the issue over to the hood. Okay, I'm liking the way this side looks. I have more material that needs to come off here. And I do notice on this side here that the hood is starting to rub. So I may have to put this in the fixture and mill that off on the milling machine. I can try just touching it with a file. I'm not pushing very hard at all. Almost polishing the surface. Now, if I was building a gunsmith bullseye gun, gunsmith fit bullseye gun, I'd probably roll with that right there. But I think we're going to work this one just a little bit further, make sure that we don't have any bind. But that's what you call a hard fit barrel. Not bad. Alright, in this little clip I'm going to be taking down the side of the hood, because now that this barrel is dropping in to the locking lugs properly, it looks like one side of the hood is in fact rubbing a little bit on the breech, or the edges of the breech. So what I'm doing here is I have a 5C collet block, and I use a 37/64 collet that fits the barrel pretty tight. And I'm using a adjustable parallel just to loosely set the hood, the alignment of the hood, so that it's parallel with this plane. And then for good measure, you can sweep across that with a 10th indicator and dial that in really, really close. But this is going to allow us to take that cut and true that hood up. So how I do this is I'll find that edge of that hood, and I rotate the barrel back and forth to set that alignment. Once I get that set, like I said, I can check it with a 10th indicator, which we'll do a little bit later. But next up, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to use the vise to tighten this in the 5C collet block. Okay. Now, as good measure, always check that you're on the proper side. So we're actually needing to take a little bit of material off the non-ejection side. I always double check my work on that. Remember, this D is on the side that's going to be our ejection side. And then this is the surface here that we need to take off about 5 thousandths. All right, why is that not sitting flat? Make sure your surfaces are clean. There we go. All right, I'm going to take a Sharpie and I'm just going to touch that surface so that I can get a good reference on how much material needs to come off. All right, and then what I like to do is I like to come down and just barely touch that. All right, I've touched off, I've come across that surface, and now I'm going to come down probably about 5 thousandths. Okay, that's good. Okay, we just finished cutting that area on the hood that was rubbing. So, just to recap, we determined that it wasn't seating in the slide properly. So we relieved the locking lugs where they were rubbing a little bit, and that allowed the barrel to begin seating into the slide properly. And it kind of uncovered another issue, that during full battery lockup, this left side of the hood was rubbing. So we have went in and we removed about 6 thousandths total of material on the left side of the hood, and we're going to try it again. So I haven't done anything else. I haven't touched the locking lugs again since, and we're going to see if we're still getting a little bit of bind. Make sure I got the right bushing. Yep. Okay. Ooh, I like it. Okay, so right off the bat, I can feel something that I wasn't feeling before, and that is, it didn't feel like it it bound when it first went in. So let's take a look at this. It's a little tricky to do looking through the camera, but that's it. So what I'm looking at here, it's a little hard to tell, but what I want it to do, I want it to slide and drop without kicking to one side or the other. We may have it. Like I said, it's a little tricky to do through the camera, but once it drops down, I can feel that it's a good lockup. I can rotate back and forth pretty evenly. I don't feel like it's more bound up on one side or the other. So let's try it. Let's see what it looks like in the frame. Oh, look at that. That's it. All right, we're gonna put this thing back together and do a little test shooting. So I like to use this Wilson lube on the slide to frame fit, and then on a spring and the recoil spring, I like to just put a touch of this. So this one isn't a full length guide rod, but we'll put just a touch of this on here. That's way too much. We'll wipe a little bit of that off. All right, and then like I said, I like this for the frame to slide fit. Alright, since we're essentially fitting in a new barrel, I'm going to put a little bit on the top of this barrel. Put a little bit up here where the bushing is going to be sliding, or where the barrel is going to be sliding on the bushing. Alright, this thing is ready for some test fire.